Good morning. What I want to talk about today are health savings accounts. Quick show of hands. Who here has heard of or has a health savings account? Anybody? Good. So we've got some activity, some knowledge base of it and everything. Now, one of the things that I get quite often is they say, oh yeah, I know what a health savings account is. That is that cafeteria plan. That is that Section 125 program. And I say, no, it's not. It's not an FSA. That's a flexible spending account. A health savings account is actually a health insurance product. It's been around about 10 years now. What I wanted to talk to you about today, at about a 10,000 foot level, is what an HSA is, how they work, from an employer standpoint and from an employee standpoint, whether or not it might be something you might want to take a look at. Also, how it dovetails into kind of the overall topic today from a tax standpoint, tax opportunities, tax savings, etc., etc. So let's talk a little bit about what a health savings account is. They've actually been around about 10 years now. They were signed into law with President Bush in December of '03. Signed a law. There's actually two components of the law that brought this into place. One was the formation of the health savings accounts. The other one was Part D of the Medicare prescription program. Part D, as some of you may know, has really taken off very strongly. It actually has totally revolutionized prescription programs for seniors. Also, under the program, they were effective January 1 of 2004. So again, about just over 10 years. What are they? If you remember nothing else about my little presentation today, remember a couple of things. First off, if you think of a health savings account as an umbrella, and under that umbrella there's really two main components. First, there's a high deductible health plan, HDHP, a qualified high deductible health plan. Those are offered by the health insurance carriers. Second component of it is a custodial account, a tax advantage custodial account that you establish with some type of lending institution. So you've got these two components underneath this umbrella, and that's how you establish your health savings account. We're going to talk a little bit about it. The actual high deductible health plan is a catastrophic plan. It has a high deductible. All right. The way the programs work is that it provides the employees, or an employee if you're self-employed, you could also set this up on an individual basis, a tax-free basis for paying for your medical expenses. Here's another very key component of the program. It makes you a better consumer of health care. Who here, quick show of hands, who here has seen the commercials over the past couple of years from Metro Imaging? Anybody seen the commercials, Metro Imaging? What's the main focus of that? It's you see the individuals talking to one of their friends, oh, you mean I can utilize this vendor? I don't have to use the vendor that my physician told me to utilize? There's something less expensive, maybe the same quality? Yes. What it means is you are becoming a shopper of health care. That was one of the major components of a health savings account. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So, what are they? They provide the ability to save on a tax-favored basis for future medical expenses. Because what you are in essence doing is you're putting money aside that you are then drawing from to pay for those medical expenses. They can be set up on individual plans or on your employer-based plan. So if you're an employer, you could set this up. If you're just an individual and you want to set up a program, you can set it up. They are portable. So if you were to leave employ and go somewhere else, go to a different state, you can carry this program with you wherever you may go. All right? Now, let's talk a little bit about the high deductible health plan. In essence, in the St. Louis marketplace, there are three primary health insurance carriers: United Healthcare, Anthem, as well as Coventry, which is soon to be called Aetna Health Plan. There are some other carriers out there as well, Assurant and the like. They all have high deductible health plans that you could set up for your health savings account. But they all have to meet certain requirements, and these requirements changed every year. There's like an uptick, if you will, to some of the other requirements that are in place. From a deductible standpoint, an individual must have at least a deductible of $1,250. This is for 014, and for a family, $2,500. Usually what you'll see with your health savings account, the high deductible health plan, is you'll see your family deductible 2 times whatever the single deductible may be. You also have an out-of-pocket maximum. $6,350 is the most you can have for single coverage, and $12,700 is for the family coverage. That is for your high deductible health plan. Here are some of the other things. What happens is, under the high deductible health plan, you don't have your office visit copays, you don't have your prescription drug card copays, you don't have your emergency room copays. You are in essence paying for everything, first dollar out of your own pocket until you hit your deductible, whatever that deductible may be that you have set up in that plan. All right? Now, the key is that if you have set aside money into your savings account, you are drawing from that savings account to help pay for those expenses. So a good example, let's say you go to Dr. Smith for you're not feeling well and everything, you got to go in and get some tests done, and that whole expenditure might be $280 for that office visit and some diagnostic tests. You would in essence be responsible for that $280, as opposed to right now your program might say, well, it's a $35 office visit for everything to be covered. So you are going to be out of pocket differently than what if you were under an office visit program. Now, here's one thing that's very nice, though, about the program. It's actually been in place since day one, even with the onset of the Affordable Care Act, which is assuring that you have preventive care. But actually, health savings accounts had it from day one, and that is preventive care is paid for 100%. So you don't have to worry about meeting your deductible if you wanted to go in and have a physical or well baby child checkup, things like that. Those are all covered at 100% before you even meet your deductible. All right? Now, here's another thing that's very important to know. If you do have a family under your program, under the health savings account, in normal circumstances, you have to meet that family deductible before coverage starts to kick in. The only difference would be if you had what they call an embedded deductible, which means everybody within that family has their own specific deductible, their own individual deductible. So there's a good thing you always want to take a look at. Is it better for me to have an embedded or non-embedded family deductible program? Let's talk a little bit about your health savings account that you've set up with a bank or lending institution. Number one, you can have the contributions made by the employer, the employee only, or some type of combination thereof. But you do have some limits as far as what you can put in. Again, similar to the deductible limits, there are some limits as far as what your contributions can be each year. There's been upticks in this year after year after year. In 2014, that number is $3,300 or $6,550 if you do have a family. Now, they are prorated. If you get into a health savings account halfway through the year, you can't contribute that full amount. It's going to be prorated based on the number of months left in that calendar year. All right. Now, for those of us who are barely 55 or older, you can also make what they call an additional catch-up phase into your contributions if you want to. Now, if you do make a contribution from the employee standpoint, the individual standpoint, that is going to be reduced right off the top from your federal income tax. All right? We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Now, with that savings account that you have, you are able to then pay for your medical expenses throughout the course of the year. So you've taken this money, you've set it aside in a savings account, and now you're paying for qualified medical expenses. What is a qualified medical expenses? It actually is fairly encompassing. Medical, dental, vision, things that, that you're not getting any coverage for right now, you can pay from your savings account for those costs. Over-the-counter drugs as well. Some of those are also going to be included in the qualified medical expenses. Now, even if your spouse and or dependent children are not part of your health savings account through your employer, the individual is still able to utilize for some of their medical expenses throughout the year from this savings account. I would say, Scott, what isn't covered? What can't I pay for? Well, I always use the example, a nice flat screen plasma TV. You can't pay for that out of the qualified medical expenses. Let's talk about opening your health savings account. Any type of bank, lending institution, a place that sets up IRAs, those credit unions, any of those type of places that do operate a health savings account program will allow you to set up your own health savings account. In the St. Louis area, Bank of America, U.S. Bank, also Commerce Bank, all those plus many others offer health savings account programs. That's where you would set it up. Now, what can't you use the health savings accounts for? I've talked about the plasma TV, but also another thing is things such as your insurance premium. You are not allowed to use a qualified medical expense to pay for your insurance premium, except for under some circumstances. COBRA coverage, your Medicare supplement, some qualified long-term care coverage, you could utilize some of the expenses as well. Now, another big question is right now, since we're going through a lot of the initial operation of the Affordable Care Act, though the Affordable Care Act has been around now for 4 years, actually was signed into law on March 23rd of 2010, so there's a lot of components that have already been implemented, but a lot of people here in the last year with the individual mandate are now really becoming more and more aware of what the Affordable Care Act is, how it operates, what's going on with it. So one of the questions I get quite often is, Scott, how does the Affordable Care Act implement? How does it work with a health savings account? What's the impact? Are there issues? The short answer is this: not too much. That was one of the things that throughout the years was like, okay, would health savings account be impacted much by the Affordable Care Act? And it really isn't. What I've seen probably more than anything else, that in general the deductibles for these health insurance programs, the high deductible health plans, have gone up. But as far as the actual true mechanism of it, it really hasn't been altered that much under the Affordable Care Act. So it's still a very viable product for those individuals as well as employer groups out there. Let's talk about some of the advantages. It's affordable. Usually when you have a higher deductible health insurance program, your premiums should go down. A couple of operative words I use there: should, usually. Sometimes it doesn't, so that's why I want to take a look at it. Also, it's flexible. You can use the fund to pay for your medical expenses. You can save the money to pay for future expenses. Under the health savings account, if you do not utilize the money that is in your fund, it rolls over year after year after year. So it is, in essence, a true savings account. All right? That is different from the flexible savings account. You have control. How much money do you, the employer, want to put into it? How much money do you, the employee, want to put into it? You have some control. Now, remember those contribution limits we do have? So there are some limits to it, but you do have some control. You can determine whether or not you want to save in that account or use that account to pay for some expenses. It's flexible, it's portable. You change jobs, become unemployed, it follows you. If you change marital status, it follows you. Ownership, funds remain in there from year after year, it accrues, no use it or lose it. Let's talk about some of the tax savings, tax benefits for you, the employer, as well as the employee. The employer's contribution are excluded from gross income, so you're going to see some savings from there. From an employer standpoint, you're going to see some reduction in your overall taxes. Tax deductions when you do contribute. So if you, the individual and the employer contributing, you get the tax deductions. Tax-free earnings, the money that you do earn, I'll be honest with you, I think we talked about it a little bit before, there's not a whole lot of earnings going on with some of these accounts and everything. So, but, you know, 1%, 2% basically is what I'm seeing out there for the earnings. But also tax-free withdrawals for the qualified medical expenses. So when you take your debit card and you go to your doctor's office and they swipe your debit card for your HSA, the money comes directly from your savings account, your HSA, and there's no tax on that withdrawal that you make on it. Now, there are some disadvantages. Some of these are major, some of these are minor. First off, you have to understand how the process works. This is more than just a health insurance program. You put it in front of the employee and boom, off they go with their office visit copays and life is good, da 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 da. You have to have an understanding of how the process works. You have to have an understanding there's really two components. You set up your savings account and you've got your high deductible health plan. So you have to understand the nuances. You have to understand the fact that when you go to see Dr. Smith for that office visit, it's not going to be $35. It may be $182. It's going to come out of your pocket from that savings account. Premiums, as I mentioned before, the premiums may not be that much of a difference between a standard product from an HSA product. The individual employees may have other savings programs. So they say, I don't need to worry about having a savings program put in place for this. I'm just going to utilize my current program. Health conditions. For those individuals that have a lot of major health conditions, they may say, you know what? This type of a program may not be a benefit to me because if I know I'm going to hit my deductible every single year, where am I going to get some type of a savings year after year accrued for the money that I'm putting aside? But that's something you have to take a look at because it might be a reduction in the premiums. Even though you may be hitting deductible, you still may find that it's a better program for you than just the traditional PPO model. Now, there are a couple of websites out there that are very good pieces of information. Probably the best one, I think, is the HSAinside.com. Got a wealth of information, allows you to go in there, check out some different things, how it works, how the program can be set up, and etc. What do I do now? All right, I'm an employer. I've got a health insurance plan in place for my 13 individual employees. What do I do? How can I figure out if a health savings account program is the best solution for me, for my employees? One of the things you need to do is you need to review your current health insurance program. There are many different things going on right now. I feel that there's, in essence, 3 different major healthcare programs in place. You've got the traditional programs that we've had in place for the last 50 years. You've got the Affordable Care Act, and then you've also got on our Medicare and what's going on with Medicare. So you've got all these different programs, you've got different contracts, you've got different issues. What's best for you? How does it work for you? Take a look at your current health insurance program. Does it meet the needs of the employer and the employees? Talk to your broker, talk to your consultant. Ask them to do an analysis of your current program to see if a health savings account or maybe some other product might be a good fit for you at this time. Also, take a look at the other insurance carriers. I mentioned a couple of the major insurance carriers, but there are others. There are also self-funded programs you might want to take a look at depending on the size of the business that you have. And then you just sit back and say, is a health savings account right for my employers and for myself from a business standpoint? So that's pretty much it. Thank you very much.